How do you deal with haters, trolls, critics, and just downright mean people? Well, that's a great question. It's a great question for everybody. And it's also a really good question for people who are online entrepreneurs, people who have YouTube channels, people who run advertisements, right? Put themselves out there in the public realm. And for that reason, this video is going to go on the business coaching playlist and the Coach Andrew Talks playlist. But anyways, let's start talking about this, because a lot of us have to deal with on a daily basis people that we don't necessarily want to deal with, right? People we don't want to talk to, people we don't want to be near, situations we don't want to be in. Life is full of haters and trolls and unpleasant conversations and arguments and tension and conflict. And a lot of us have tendencies to just deal with these things poorly, whether it's sweeping conflict under the rug, lashing out, getting emotional. And some of us, like myself, we tend to take these things and internalize them and hold on to them for years, and it sours us, right? I had an argument with a friend in high school long time ago, many years ago. And after that argument happened, we had a falling out. We didn't talk. We kind of blocked each other on social media. He blocked my phone number. It wasn't nice. And I held on to that for years. Like I thought about that at least once a week for 3 to 4 years. And it tormented me because I just wanted to know, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Why did he say that? What was he in a dark place and I just didn't realize it? Or was I really being a terrible person? You know, I wanted to understand, and it drove me insane. So whatever kind of approach you're taking to situations like this, when someone's trolling you, being mean to you, you know, criticizing you, prejudice, whatever approach you take, if it is an approach that causes you stress, then I would argue it is a bad approach. And so today I'm going to give you some of my ways which I approach these situations. And, you know, you could call them philosophies, thought experiments, whatever. But these methods will help you reframe negative situations with negative people into a situation where you can dismiss it and it won't threaten your identity. You won't feel stressed about it. You won't feel like you're at fault. And you also won't blame the other person, right? Because ultimately these situations are super simple, right? When someone, you know, leaves a nasty comment on one of your Facebook ads or your YouTube videos or your profile, whatever it is, it's not a serious situation. Someone's talking about you behind your back at work. One of your friends says something mean. These are tiny, petty little moments where someone, simply put, has lost control of their ego and said something inappropriate. That's all that this comes down to. And if it bothers you, that is simply you losing control of your ego in response. And so we want to avoid that. We want to give you better control of your brain, your ego, your thought process, so that you do not retaliate and, you know, continue to feed into the situation. All right, so I'm diving into my screen here. And these are the two approaches that I'm going to give you today. Now, there are lots of different philosophies, lots of different things that you can implement in your brain and in your life to make situations like this easier. I'm not going to tell you which is the best, which I think is right or wrong, because honestly, it's going to be different for every person. But these are my two favorite approaches. They're related, they're not related, they're the same, they're not the same. You know, take everything I say with a grain of salt. This is just how I view things. Now, the first approach is the biological approach, right? And it's going to concern things like your brain chemistry, evolutionary biology, sociology, psychology, all of these things, right? These are all related fields that play into each other. The biological approach to this situation is just an integration of the biological sciences. And that ultimately comes down to a fundamental understanding of human behavior. You have to understand the drivers, the main, primary, ancient drivers behind human behavior. So the brain is very ancient, right? There is a lot you can read about the brain and genetics, and you don't need a degree or you don't have to take university classes to understand this stuff. You can just watch some TED Talks, watch some lectures online. The stuff is fascinating, and what's even more fascinating is how much we don't actually know and we're still learning, which is incredibly cool. But what we do know is important in helping us understand the way humans treat each other. And the simplest way I can put it is that human society is based on social hierarchies, right? We are designed to operate within social units, like a family unit, a tribe, a society, a civilization. There are different levels of units, and within each type of unit, there are different levels of hierarchies. And these come down to, the things that ultimately make people feel good about themselves, the things that give a human an identity within a society. So we're talking about things like money, right? Things like wealth, things like power, things like attractiveness, reproductive fitness, right? So if you have a spouse or a partner, if you have kids or not, things like strength. That is a sword, that's not, all right, it's a sword. But these are the things that ultimately make people feel like they're important, right? And the more of these things you have, the higher you are on the hierarchy. Imagine that, right? This is like keeping up with the Joneses. You're always comparing yourself to other people. You're always trying to be better than others. And even if you're someone who's humble, someone who puts others first and you're selfless, that's great. I applaud you. But you still have those primal drivers in your brain. You are still subconsciously immediately comparing yourself to every single person you see. When you walk into a grocery store, the first thing you do, especially if you're a male, is you look at everyone who's in the store and you immediately subconsciously take an inventory of each person, right? All of the women, you immediately categorize them as like, are they close enough to your age group? Are they attractive? Are they this? Are they that? And then the men, you start sizing them up. How big are they? Are they strong? Do they look intelligent? Do they look powerful? This is all subconscious. This isn't something, and some people consciously do it, but all of us subconsciously do it. And we're immediately determining the level of threat, the level of competition. And that's what we do. It's what we do. It's in our brain. You're never going to stop it. Okay. So if you're sad about that, you just need to get over it. But that is how we operate, okay? And it's the same thing on the internet. It's the same thing on social media. I feel like these behaviors are actually amplified on social media, because in reality, you walk into that grocery store, if you're 5'0" and 105 pounds, you've never lifted a weight in your life, and you can't talk to people, and you're ugly, no one's gonna be scared of you. But you could go on social media. And portray yourself however you want. You could write crazy stories. You could pay people to make videos, do Photoshop. You could only post pictures with perfect angles, right? Anything you want. That's what social media is. And that's why all these people who run the advertisements on Facebook, the fitness coaches, they're only using fitness models or pictures with amazing lighting so you can see their abs. The business coaches, they pose in front of cars and they film their videos casually walking in front of their pool or coming out of their mansion, and they make sure that you can see the whole thing by swinging the camera. It's ridiculous. It's all a show. And ultimately, that's what human behavior is. It's just a show. All day long, we are acting to impress others. Now, if you're getting hate in any situation, especially online though, all it means is that someone didn't like your show and they feel threatened by it. This YouTube channel is a show. Some people don't like it. That's fine. You can leave a nasty comment. I'll smile. But when people don't like the show that they're seeing and they see someone who has qualities that make them feel like they're less valuable, and particularly when that person feels like a threat, okay? So if that person is really dominant, really aggressive, really loud, if they're critical, they're saying mean things, they're abusing their power, if they're threatening in any kind of way, other people around them are going to begin to feel insecure. They're going to feel like their place in society is threatened by that person. And that is when those people lash out. Okay, that's all it is. That's all that this is. Finding an argument or a debate between two people that is actually grounded in logic and reason and data is very, very rare. It is a very difficult thing to find. You can look up debates between, some of the most respected people in politics or science or philosophy, and you can watch their arguments, and they still have dogma. They still have prejudice. They're not avoiding logical fallacies, every chance they get. You know, they are still making mistakes, and that's because they're human. Like, no one is perfect. No one thinks like a machine. So the first thing you have to understand when someone is stressing you out, criticizing you, hating, trolling, is they're just acting like a human. They feel threatened by something, and they're trying to defend their place on the totem pole, right? They see you as here, they see themselves as here, and they're gonna try to say things about you, they're gonna criticize you, whether they do it in a really rude, mean, inappropriate fashion, or if they're trying to do it in like a logical, poised, you know, I'm super eloquent and respectful, and here's why I disagree. It doesn't matter, it's all the same. They're trying to knock out that block in between you so that they can get closer to you on the totem pole and maybe try to get above you. That's all that this is. And the bottom line for the biological approach is that humans are humans. And when you encounter a situation like this, you shouldn't be surprised, because animals act like animals. And if you understand the drivers behind the most basic human behaviors, you're going to understand why people do this stuff. It's their brain, right? And we can rationalize this then. We can think about this and say, okay, well, this person is saying these things because something about me upset them and it made them feel insecure, made them feel threatened, you know, or they want to express their dominance by saying how much smarter they are or pointing out what I did wrong. And that's fine, okay? You can look at that and be like, I'm not going to react like an animal. And you can ignore it. Or you can respond with empathy and kindness, right? Most of the time, it's best to just not even respond to these things. Like, even if you respond in the kindest fashion, if you're super respectful, there is still going to be something called Poes Law. And Poes Law is really important for interactions on the internet. And Poes Law basically states that without a super clear indicator, it is impossible to tell if someone's being sarcastic or not. So you can read a comment online that is super respectful, super well written, really intelligent, and you can't tell if that person's being sarcastic or not. There's no way to know. You know, usually you have to see a video like this one. You can see my face, you can see my body language, you can tell I'm not being sarcastic. But if you type something up, there's no telling. There's really no telling. You can never tell if someone's being serious or not. And this is why the internet is such a volatile place, because everyone's acting like an animal. They're acting on impulses, they're acting on insecurity, and they're all taking different approaches to it, but no one can tell who's doing what, and no one knows who's being genuine. So on the internet, when you take a biological approach, just accept the fact that animals are animals. You shouldn't be surprised about it. The fact that they feel threatened about you, or they want to express some kind of dominance, is actually a compliment, right? It probably means that you're doing something right, and some people who are looking at your content actually feel like you're higher up on the hierarchy. Some of those people are going to be disillusioned and they think that you're lower, and by stepping on you, they're going to push you down lower, which again is just insecurity. They want to stay at the top and they feel like you're at the bottom. They want to keep you down there. Whatever it is, take it as a compliment and just leave it at that, because animals are animals. Now, the second approach that I want to give you is the Stoic approach. This one is I think a little bit harder to take on, just because it requires some self-discipline, and you know, it's actually like a double-edged sword. With the biological approach, you can just dismiss it and be like, I'm not going to participate. But with the Stoic approach, you actually kind of have to hold yourself accountable, because if you're going to respond to other people as a Stoic, you also are kind of obligated to respond to yourself as a Stoic. So Stoicism, if you're not familiar with it, you should go read about it, watch some lectures. I'm not going to explain the entire thing here because there's a lot to it. But essentially, it's an ancient Greek philosophy that teaches people how to stay balanced, right? It teaches you how to not experience emotional highs and lows. And it kind of teaches that the best way to move through life is in a harmonious fashion. You should move through life not being stressed out by bad things, and also not being overjoyed about good things. You should try to stay balanced and stay rational and stay logical, and recognize that you have control over yourself and you can be happy if you allow yourself to be happy. Kind of controversial these days, I know. But the simplest way to put it, I've seen many people explain it this way and I love it, is that Stoicism divides life into two categories. There are things you can control and things you cannot control. And everything goes into one or the other. And if this categorization is too broad, think of it this way, reword it this way. There are things you have 100% complete control over, and there are things you don't have 100% complete control over. So that's going to make the distinction easier to make. When you actually take inventory using this system, you're going to realize that the things you can control are very few. There's very few things you have complete control over. And it usually just ends up coming down to your thoughts, your behaviors, and your reactions, right? And your beliefs, maybe. But even beliefs are shaped by society and your upbringing to some degree. But the things you cannot control are basically everything else. And if we go back here, if we go back to the totem pole, right? We're talking about money, power, love, relationships, status. If we're talking about your place in society, keeping up with the Joneses, you have to realize that that's a fruitless endeavor, because you cannot control what other people think of you. If you buy a sports car because you want to impress people, you buy a big house, you buy expensive jewelry, you're doing it to make yourself feel better because you think that other people are going to respect you more. By having all of these nice things, I'm higher up on the totem pole. And you might think that that's true, but the truth here, the Stoic truth, is that you can't make other people like you. You can't. Your watches, doesn't matter how nice you are, doesn't matter how many gifts you give away, you cannot make people like you. It's impossible. The only thing you can control is whether or not you care if people like you. Easier said than done. Now, Stoics don't necessarily believe that having nice things is bad. We don't think that wealth is bad or success is bad. Those things are preferred neutrals, right? They're not good, they're not bad. We prefer them, but without them, we'd be fine. But when it comes to people, Stoics don't care. They don't care what people think. There's a famous story about one of the Greek Stoic philosophers who was sunbathing on a beach, and Alexander the Great, the most powerful man in the world at the time, he approached him and asked him, "Is there anything that I can give you? Is there anything that I can provide for you?" And the philosopher looked up at Alexander and said, "Yes, you can stop blocking the sunlight." Because he didn't care. He didn't care if the most powerful man in the world liked him or not. But Alexander the Great wanted this famous philosopher to love him and be his friend. And you can start asking yourself, who's more powerful? Now, clearly, Alexander the Great was very powerful. He had large armies, the biggest empire the world's ever seen. But the philosopher had control over his mind. And, you can decide for yourself which is more appealing to you. But that's the philosophy here. You cannot control what other people do or think or say. And so as a Stoic, when people lash out at you, all you have to do is ask yourself, can I control this? Can I change this? Can I change this person? Can I change this situation? And the simplest answer is no. You can't. Now here's where the double-edged sword comes in, because as a Stoic, you can't control what other people do, but you can control what you do. So that means not lashing out, not responding, not doing anything because you don't care, but also doing your best to not judge other people, to not critique other people, to not try to change other people, and to stop worrying so much about being right and instead start worrying about finding the truth, right? It's not about winning, it's about finding the truth. And some of the Stoic philosophies are in direct competition and conflict with our biological programming, and that's the unfortunate truth. That's why Stoicism is hard to practice. It's hard to get good at this. It's not a skill that you just learn about and say, hey, I'm a Stoic now. No, you have to practice this every single day. That's it, you guys. These are my two approaches for dealing with haters who leave nasty comments on my ads and my videos. I don't care. I read it, I go, oof, that kind of stung. But I never respond right away, because that's responding from a place of emotion. My biology has secreted a bunch of adrenaline and cortisol and stress hormones, which are making me stupid. And if you react to something when you're stupid, you're going to react stupidly. So I wait. I wait until those fight or flight sympathetic hormones leave my body. I can calm down and I can look at this with a biological approach. I can look at it with a stoic approach and recognize that the situation actually doesn't matter. It's just animals being animals, and I can't control it. And that's it. I can only control how I think, how I feel, and what I do, and that's what I focus on. I invite you to do the same. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Leave a nasty comment and see how quickly I do nothing about it, or like the video. That's always appreciated too. But I post stuff like this all the time. I am obsessed with self-development. That's what this channel is all about. So I'd love it if you guys join the community. Anyways, we'll see you in the next video. Take care.